happy to yield to the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Stauber.
Thank you very much, Congressman, for this 1 hour. It is needed, and I appreciate your time. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to discuss the devastating fentanyl crisis that's wreaking havoc on our communities and our families. The hardest thing I ever had to do during my 23 years as a law enforcement officer was tell an unsuspecting mother that her child had died due to a drug overdose. The opioid crisis has ravaged our communities for years, and when people were forced inside during this pandemic, things only got worse. For the first time ever in 2021, drug overdoses in the United States topped 100,000. Overdose deaths are now claiming a new victim every 5 minutes. And as stated earlier, fentanyl overdoses were the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45 just last year. That's more than the COVID-19 deaths, car crashes, or suicides put together for that age group. The American people are suffering. We have a moral obligation to do everything we can to prevent another addiction, to prevent another death, to prevent another heartbroken family. The DEA revealed in December that criminal drug networks in Mexico, using resources from China, are trafficking fentanyl over Biden's open southern border at a rate that could provide a lethal dose to every American over 7 times. Cartels and the drug runners are exploiting open border policies of Joe Biden and this administration. And the American people are literally paying the price with their lives. Without serious action, this fentanyl will continue to flow across our border and affect our families and communities. Joe Biden must secure our border by finishing the wall, fully reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, and send the clear message: don't come to the United States illegally. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate those words and your expertise on the issue. Mr. Speaker, I yield next to the gentleman from Texas, Dr. Babin, who I think will address some of the other crises we're facing as well.
Thank you, my good friend from Louisiana, for having this. There are multiple crises. That's exactly right. It's nearly impossible to discuss President Biden's self-inflicted economic crisis without mentioning his excessive spending. I'm not talking about money to strengthen our military or to make America more competitive in the world. Biden and the Democrats have no interest in that. This out-of-control spending is necessary only to appease the radical Democrat base who prioritize radical climate change policies without a care in the world for their consequences. As a result, inflation sits at a 40-year high, and our national debt has increased by trillions of dollars. Trillions. For years, my colleagues across the aisle have worked tirelessly to desensitize Americans to the word trillion. And they've succeeded for the most part because a trillion of anything is such a mind-boggling figure for the average human to wrap his mind around it. And when I was elected to Congress in 2014, our national debt was $17 trillion. Fast forward 8 years later, our national debt has topped $30 trillion. $30 trillion. This should shock every American taxpayer, but it doesn't seem to. Allow me to put this into perspective. If you owed $1 trillion, $1 trillion, and you decided to pay $1 per second until your debt was paid off, it would take you around 31,700 years to become debt-free. Now, multiply that by 30 for $30 trillion of our national debt. I'm no mathematician, but this amounts to approximately 951,000 years. So if we paid $1 per second until our $30 trillion national debt is paid off, it would take us just shy of 1,000,000 years to become debt-free. President Biden and the Democrats must be stopped. American solvency must be preserved. Generations of future Americans are counting on us to regain control of Washington's unsustainable spending. We literally cannot afford to fail. And I yield back.
That debt is so staggering, and you're right, Dr. Babin, so many people don't stop to think about the magnitude of it and what we're doing to our children, our grandchildren, every future generation of Americans. Amen. We better get control of it. Thank you for that insight tonight, Mr.